Our next speaker is not only a former advisor for Team Kennedy, but is also an author, speaker, and poet. Folks, please put your hands together for Theo Wilson.
Hi. Right. I'm here because if you're going to have a strong independent movement, you're going to need the black vote, and I was brought on to Team Kennedy to break that barrier. And I can say this, when it comes to this polarized climate of identity politics, you're going to need some key language to break through to that other side. And I know this because I was brought into the medical freedom movement to find synergy between one community and another. That's all I do, right? And the reason why I was able to do that is because I kind of got a weird, unique history. You see, my grandfather was a Tuskegee Airman, one of the first black men to fly, right? Y'all can clap it up for that. Granddad made a lot of sacrifices. Which meant, when I grew up, I had to know everything associated with the word Tuskegee. Everything. Because the other side of that is the experiment which my grandfather just barely missed being an airman. It was down the road. And so I found myself in an interesting predicament when the year of our Lord 2020 rolled around, and me being somebody so far on the left side of the aisle found that my viewpoints on medical freedom weren't necessarily rewarded by those on the left. How did we get here? Well, it's really, really simple. I think that the lines are drawn incorrectly when it comes to how we've been divided, not only in this era, but how we've been divided all throughout American history. It just ain't right. And people of all races, colors, and creeds, genders, nationalities understand that the unity that Zach was just talking about is something that will express itself in due time. It's all a matter of when people of goodwill come together with the right tools. And so what do those tools look like? How do you break through that other side? Unlike a lot of the bend and push in the modern environment right now, we actually got to take a firm, forceful look at our history. Why? Because it contextualizes the present moment. And we got to do that without any identity politics, any of the barriers, just take a forceful, strong look at it, right? And somebody like me, I really didn't have a choice to do anything but. You see, my first voting experience was when history was made. I happened to be in the capital of Florida in the year 2000, when, right? Somebody remembers that. Remember the dangling Chads? Huh? Remember Bush versus Gore? 537 votes deciding that? Yeah, I was 7 blocks away at a historically black college called Florida A&M University. That's where I got educated. And what I found myself in the middle of was history being rewritten right before my eyes. A lot of people don't know this, but the democratic experiment was in trouble right then and there because Bush won that state by 537 votes. At my university, Florida A&M University, predominantly black university, we were turned away from the polls an hour early. We were turned away from the polls an hour early. A couple of my friends came back like, dude, we went there, we were on time, we tried to get out from class, and we were not allowed to vote. It is estimated that 1,000 Florida A&M students were blocked from voting that day, which would have carried the entire nation over to Gore. Which meant that when 9/11 happened, a whole lot of things might have fallen differently if somebody else was in charge, including of our war machine, right? This is where we are. Black voters understand suppression. Black voters understand that neither party is meeting our needs. Now, in that election, I got in trouble because I voted for this dude named Ralph Nader. Neither Bush or Gore spoke to me, right? You see, I happened to be at the NAACP convention in the year 2000 that year, and everybody came to speak. And Ralph Nader was talking my language. He was the one talking about the working poor, the working class. He sounded kind of similar to this other dude who was running this year. You might have heard about him, right? I've always resonated with this message, and so do black voters. Yes, we do, right? Now, here's what happened. Because the Republicans burned me so bad, that's what kicked me over to the left. That's what did it, right? And so through several successive elections, I was 10 toes down for the Democrats. That's all I knew. Down ballot, blue no matter who, okay? So when the John Kerry campaign came around, that's who I was voting for, and oh my God, in '08 when Barack Obama was running for president, I said, man, listen, Barack Obama's gonna change the game for everybody. Like being a gangster ain't gonna be cool. Everybody gonna be in suits and ties like this, right? That's what I thought, right? So I was wrong about that, but here's what I did learn. The needs that Barack Obama spoke to were actually the needs of like a progressive independent. And somebody said this earlier, he governed as a center Democrat. But what got him on board was these needs not being met. Again and again, we see the ball dropped. And in my community, it says when white America gets a cold, black America catches pneumonia, okay? When the working poor's needs are not met, we feel it very, very acutely in my community, right? And so I literally walked for Obama until I could not walk no more. I had arches in my feet that were swollen, and I had to pass off my clipboard to register voters, right? That's how committed that I was. So imagine how upset I was when 2012 came around, and the guy had sent 30,000 troops to war and expanded the drone program. This is not what I voted for. I voted against Bush for this very reason, right? So now I'm kind of feeling disgruntled, right? Because something else happened during that time period, and that was the BLM movement. It started to arise on the horizon. I don't care how y'all feel about it. I'm just going to tell you my journey with this, okay? What I did not tell you was that shortly after I graduated college, I was handcuffed and beaten by Denver police. That's what happened. I'm a police brutality survivor. In Obama's administration, my friend Alonzo Ashley was killed by Denver police. So when BLM came on the horizon, that's what I was saying. I was almost propelled into that side of history. But yet and still, BLM would not have been necessary had the needs of the working poor been met, including our ability to pick police officers from our community who look like us. Now, there's some things that's going on that Democrats failed to do in our communities. What drove us over there? Identity politics. And when a working class hero emerged in 2016, well, I was all over that. Y'all might have remembered this guy, Bernie Sanders. Looked kind of like a mad scientist. Remember that guy, Bernie Sanders? Listen, that was my guy. That's my guy, right? Bernie Sanders was the first candidate since '08 Barack Obama, not 2012, but '08, that I felt like I could vote for and not just vote against somebody else, right? But then I saw the Democrats do something. I saw the Democrats suppress candidates from inside of the party. I saw them shut down the voices of those who were rallying behind a populist candidate for one reason, because they spoke to our needs. And that's it. Speaking to our needs is the most important thing when it comes to getting folks on your side. You just got to have the right people to speak with and for you. So at that time, the rapper named Killer Mike had joined Bernie Sanders' team, right? Shout out to Killer Mike. And I was trying to see if I could raise my voice for that reason as well, right? But what happened when the Democrats suppressed Bernie Sanders, because we're just going to call it what it is, I stayed home. I stayed home. I was one of those 100 million people that was part of the largest voting bloc in America. Well, that group has grown since then. And now, according to surveys, independents are 51% of the American voter base. That's who got them afraid when Robert Kennedy threatened to be their champion, because they saw the reason why these people are following this guy is because he's speaking to the needs that both sides failed to meet. So I found myself back in the year 2020. Here we are. I have a little something happening on my Facebook page. And that is, every time I post a certain kind of message, it feels like the government's coming in from the back end and shutting down my algorithm. At this time, I had 70,000 followers on Facebook. I didn't know who I could or could not reach, but I said if my message could get out there and go viral like it used to, well, maybe I could, open some doors and businesses up so that folks could stay afloat, right? So, on the Capitol steps here in this state in 2020, you gotta imagine the scene. It's crazy. George Floyd summer. One side of the Capitol is BLM everything, and on the other side, medical freedom everything, right? So I'm out there speaking for the fact that I think that medical freedom is a Black Lives issue based on the heritage that I have running through my veins. I'm the one out there trying to build the bridge for that, right? There's this guy named Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speaking that day. And it's the first time I got a chance to shake his hand, right? Well, Jimmy from the High Wire says, hey, brother, I need you to speak to Del Bigtree, all right? So Del Bigtree brings me on, and I'm just telling the truth as I see it. And then, in 2023, I get a call from Del Bigtree. He says, hey, Bobby Kennedy's running for president, and we think that you could contribute to his campaign. So I'm like, I'm there, right? And what I learned from this campaign is this. The capture of the two-party system ain't going nowhere anytime soon, which means that the forces that are driving the independent movement ain't going anywhere anytime soon. We are here, and we are growing. The movement is getting larger because the need is getting larger. Eggs ain't getting cheaper anytime soon, and neither is gasoline, right? And so, we are in a self-rescue program now. But we all we got. We are the ones who is going to rely on each other. We are the ones who's going to build this bridge. And what I want folks to do is examine the polarization that's coming from either side that you may lean toward, right? I'm going to just keep it real with you. From the left side, I had to put down some of the preconceived notions that I had about folks who support Trump. I had to, right? Because on those Capitol steps, I'm sitting shoulder to shoulder with folks who believe in medical freedom and like nothing else with each other, right? But in the pandemic, all of our humanity was on the line. You see what I'm saying? And I'm encouraging you to look past some of this preconceived notion that you may have about folks from the left, perhaps, right? Some of the things that you may have been heard branded as like critical race theory, right? Things that you may have heard branded as wokeism. See what people really want and ask yourself the question, why do these folks believe that they are the hero of this story? Do you have common ground? Because I'm going to tell you something. In the independent campaign, like the one that Robert Kennedy was running, you ain't never going to see eye to eye with everybody. That is impossible, right? And it's the fact that Robert, as a leader, encouraged debate, encouraged verbal crossfire, encouraged the sharing of ideas, encouraged uncomfortable conversations. That's what he did. And because of those uncomfortable conversations, you will find the commonality beyond what the media machine and the political machine says is there. And I'm here to help. If there's any way that I can choose into the timeline where the independent movement becomes the voice of the people, that gets the people's needs met, then I want to be shoulder to shoulder with you in that fight. And I'll say this in closing, because I think I'm like short on time. But what I know is that, like someone said earlier, of all the Dr. Strange timelines, this is the one we are on together. This is the time that we were born in, and this is our mission. And I know that in 1776, there was a conversation going on with some folks who were up against some pretty long odds. Conversations stop violence. Conversations build bridges. Conversations start nations. And if you are willing to put down any biases, the way that I had to put down any biases and start reaching out across the aisle, there are more people from the black community that you might know that are willing to have this conversation with you. If it's all a matter of finding the right language, finding the right cultural competency, and making sure that we are communicating, I'd love to be your interpreter for that. My name is Theo E.J. Wilson, and I'll see y'all around. Peace.